What is up? Good morning and welcome to DFS and Chill, Club Fantasy's weekly DFS show. I am your host, Ryan Weisse, and if you tuned in hoping to see Kyra Wiaterowski, I got bad news for you. She is in our nation's capital watching her Philadelphia Eagles play, but I promise you the people I've brought in are far smarter than me and they are here to give you great advice. Covering cash for Kyra, which I don't know why I decided to say that live on stream, is going to be our friend, my old Mock It Like It's Hot co-host, Austin Amandolia, and the author of the A-List at DFS Academy here at Club Fantasy. Austin, how are you, buddy?
Doing great. Excited to watch some football.
Yeah, we're all excited to watch some football. Get tired of talking about it. By Sunday, I think we're done talking about football. We just want to see the damn games be played. And covering GPP for us this week, I like to give Chris as much credit as possible when it comes to just gambling in general. Chris, you're a pretty humble guy, at least out in the real world, but you're always showing us your winning betting slips and how well you do inside of the Club Fantasy group chat. Chris is a guy, Chris is sharp. If you don't know Chris, make sure you're following Chris. But Chris, I know it's early as hell out there for you. Thanks for joining us this week.
Yes, it's like 6 a.m. No, I'm just kidding. It's 9.
In Hawaii.
Thanks for having me.
I was just going to say, Chris lives in Alaska. So, folks, if you are new to DFS and Chill, just a couple of quick things. This is, as you can tell, a DFS-focused show, so we will be focusing on DFS. If you ask redraft questions, it will be me answering them in the chat. So if you want to be mad at somebody, be mad at me. I promise you it doesn't bother me. If I'm the reason you lose this week, so be it. However, if you ask a position question that happens to go in line with what position we're talking about, I will try to get these guys to answer your question. And if you ask a DFS question, it will be answered by these guys. So with all that being said, if you are new to the show, we go position by position. We are going to start with quarterbacks, and I break quarterbacks down into safe versus upside. And Austin will be covering the cash portion. So Austin's going to be looking at the safe plays at quarterback. Austin, who do you got this week?
So first off, I got Josh Allen. He is kind of my punt, or not my punt. Wow. My chalk play of the week. Definitely not a punt. He's my chalk play of the week. I think this man hates the Miami Dolphins. I don't know what that franchise did to him, but he just seems to go off every freaking time that he plays Miami. He averages well over 20 points per game. He's only had 20 fantasy points, less than 20 fantasy points once in the past 3 years against the Dolphins. And Lamar Jackson just tore up this defense. So I'm not afraid of running with Josh Allen and paying up there. And then my cheaper option is Kirk Cousins going against the Detroit Lions. And you know me, I love matchups against the Detroit Lions, particularly this week because Minnesota needs to bounce back. And they have a 29 implied point total. So there are potentially 4 touchdowns to go around during that game, and Kirk Cousins will throw 2 or 3 of those.
Yep. And if you're looking for safe and cash, you're typically looking for upside and tourney. And when we're talking about these big tournament plays, you want your lineup to be at least slightly different than everybody else's lineup. Chris, you went with a very interesting name for your first name because I want you to explain where you're getting completely different here. Do you think the public is just off of Patrick Mahomes right now?
Yeah. So, truth be told, I use a lot of Matthew Betts and Kyle Borgonone's work for DFS. Shout out to them.
Yes.
The Ultimate Draft Kit Plus, and I see a lot of their roster percentage reports that tend to be fairly accurate week after week. Josh Allen's a great pick. He's going to smash, but in tournament play, they're projecting him around 15%. So you're not going to get as much of an advantage picking Josh Allen as you would for my pick, who's Patrick Mahomes here. He's only projected at about 5% in their report. And he smashes in September. The over-under on that game is 50.5. So the Chiefs, kind of like what Austin was saying, they have 4 implied touchdowns. I think he'll probably throw at least 3 of those, even if it's just the little tap pass to Travis Kelce at the goal line. The Jags, had 3 total had 3 total touchdowns last week. Lawrence actually had a really good game with no interceptions. Against the Chiefs opponent this week. Let's see what else.
Okay, go ahead.
He's 7,900, so he's a little bit cheaper than Josh Allen. He's a little bit more expensive than Jalen Hurts, which are the biggest projected plays in DFS this week. So he's kind of right in the middle. So now Jared Goff, I really like that game too. The Lions Vikings game.
Yeah.
It could be kind of a bring back with if you're you have Cook or Justin Jefferson or a leverage play off of Kirk Cousins. They're only projecting him about 4% rostered. He has 6 total touchdowns so far this year. He went 250-4 last week. Hurts had 3 total touchdowns last week against Minnesota and an 84% completion percentage. So I like Jared Goff this week.
Yeah, and I personally love and will probably profess my love on every show moving forward for the sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So if you like Goff, I feel like a great stack there is Amon-Ra. He, as a rookie, did very well against Minnesota both times that he played them, and I think he's only improved as a player. And you could argue that Minnesota's secondary has gotten worse just by doing nothing because they have the same bad players there who continue to be bad. So I'm really on board with that. Very interesting thing you brought up with Josh Allen. Austin, did you guys see the tweet that went out the other day that Miami only beats teams whose quarterback have the letter O in the last name and loses to every team that doesn't? So you mentioned, Allen beats up on Miami, but that's because his parents were smart enough not to have an O in their last name. It just makes
things... Miami beats me, so
yeah. But no, I love all of those picks, and thanks for explaining, Chris, where Patrick Mahomes, who would have been the chalkest of all chalk, in a week like this for tourney play, he's not all that chalk, and so it could play out very well for him. We're going to move to running backs, and just to give my two friends here a little bit of a hard time, the very first question I put for running backs is give me your favorite cash duo. So I wrote favorite cash duo this week, and they both put Dalvin Cook and just Dalvin Cook. And so there's nowhere for me to really even make a duo out of Dalvin Cook. We can't split him in half. I guess we could throw his brother James in there to try to make this make sense. But other than giving them a hard time, they each gave me running backs. So Chris, I'm going to start with you. Go ahead and tell me why you like Dalvin Cook, and then give me a second running back that you're typing into the sheet right now. And then Austin, I want to talk to you about your second running back because it's an interesting play this week. So Chris, talk to me about your favorite cash duo.
All right, so we both had Dalvin Cook. We thought we were like a duo talking about Dalvin Cook.
Yeah,
that's probably where
that's clearly what I meant.
So he hasn't had a great first 2 weeks. Let's be honest here, but they're playing the Detroit Lions, one of the worst rushing defenses in the league this year. If you're looking for someone to play that's not Justin Jefferson, some sort of leverage here, like I said, Dalvin Cooks, he's a great option. He's only about 13% rostered projections, 13% projected rostered. And this point totals, it's going to be a shootout. So if he can fall into the end zone a couple of times, he's going to look great for your team.
Yeah. And then who are you pairing?
Yeah. And then David Montgomery. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go, Chris. Austin, I'll get to you.
I was like, yeah. I pair him with whoever Austin says.
Yeah. Dalvin
Cook. David Montgomery. The Bears are passing like 5 times a game. They're giving David Montgomery all the run here. Khalil Herbert barely played last week. And Montgomery looks good. I mean, over 8 a carry against Green Bay. That's a pretty good number here. And, with their 5 completions a game, he'll throw in a couple of targets as well.
Well, here's why I absolutely love everything that's about to happen right now. And Austin, I want to ask you a cash question about Dalvin Cook in a second, but I just want to kind of give some behind the scenes here. I tell everybody every week, I'm not good at DFS. That's why you don't want me talking on the show. You want these guys talking much more than me. So I saw later on, Chris, you said do not start any Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. And Austin's about to disagree with that, and we can talk about it in a second. But I had Leonard Fournette in one of my cash lineups. I went out and took him out and put in David Montgomery. So I feel really good about these picks that I've made here. And I'm pairing him with Joe Mixon. You guys aren't talking about Mixon, but that's absolutely fine. We're not getting into how bad my lineups are. However, let me start with question number 1 for you, Austin, in a cash lineup. So we've talked last week where Kyra brought up a lot about not necessarily feeling the need to stack when it comes in cash. How do we feel like if you're starting Justin Jefferson, are you avoiding Dalvin Cook in cash at all cost at that point?
Yeah, this is the point I was going to bring up whenever Chris was talking about Dalvin Cook is we've named already in here, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, and Dalvin Cook all might have good games. And I think all three of those players can have good games and it not harm any of the players. Like Kirk Cousins could throw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both of those touchdowns beat a Justin Jefferson, and Dalvin Cook to score 2 rushing touchdowns. And all of those players are going to be great lineups. I am not, however, going to put them all in the same cash lineup. I probably wouldn't put them on the same tourney lineup either, because stacking with a running back like Dalvin Cook makes less sense because he doesn't have that pass catching ability that other running backs have. So I will have some lineups that have a Cousins Jefferson stack, and then I'll have some other lineups where I have Dalvin Cook kind of out by himself
without the quarterback. And then, so Chris, you mentioned don't start any Tampa Bay players this week, and we don't always get to the who to avoid questions, but Austin, your second running back is Leonard Fournette. So talk me and Chris into Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, it's basically the point that Chris already brought up, that David Montgomery averaged 8 yards per carry against Green Bay last week. And Dalvin Cook, like, I love David Montgomery. I had it in my cash article this week, but Dalvin Cook is better than David Montgomery in the run game. And wait, I'm saying the wrong name. Leonard Fournette.
Yes.
I agree that Dalvin Cook
Leonard Fournette and David Montgomery. Yeah, my bad. David Montgomery and Leonard Fournette, they're in the same tier in my mind. And
okay,
David Montgomery is going 8 yards per carry against Green Bay, I think that Leonard Fournette can do the same. And honestly, it's even if I compare the offensive lines, like the Chicago Bears offensive line isn't anything to write home about. And we know Tampa Bay's offensive line is struggling right now as it is, but I still think this Green Bay running defense is not good. So I'll take Leonard Fournette, and they're going to have to move the ball somehow and probably try to bleed out the clock because their receiving core is
not what they did last week.
Disgusting right now. And so give the ball to Leonard Fournette. He's pretty cheap on the slate. He's in the same price category as David Montgomery. So I like running with him this week.
Chris, do you want to counter Leonard Fournette?
So I'll defer to Austin in terms of specifically in cash games.
Okay.
Cash games are not my forte. I strictly play GPP. Excuse me.
Well, you're fine.
So Leonard Fournette is going to be maybe the most rostered running back in tourney slate because of all of those injuries. No Godwin, no Evans. Tom Brady really doesn't care about the tight end position this year.
Yeah, what's going on there?
So I don't know if Russell Gage is playing. I don't think Julio's playing. I think he's going to test it pregame.
Say Gage is looking yes. Julio is true game time decision based on what I've heard.
So in true Julio fashion, probably no.
Yeah.
They're going to key on Fournette. I don't know if he's going to be as successful in the run game. He's probably going to have to, make up all of his points with the Tom Brady dump offs.
Okay.
But if he's 30% rostered, like Betts and Borgononi are projecting, that's not going to help your roster at all.
Okay. Perfect. And you know what? There couldn't have been a better answer to that question because it's something we try to emphasize on the show is the difference between cash and GPP. Austin, you're good with the safe floor of Leonard Fournette and cash, whereas Chris, there's no upside to you in GPP. We have a user question from our boy Elixirs, and this is a great question because it's one I've been struggling with all week, even in my regular lineups. But let's talk DFS, and you guys can break it down between cash and GPP. Josh Jacobs, for those that don't know, suffering with an illness, did not travel with the team to Tennessee on Friday, but then flew to Tennessee on Saturday. They are still calling him questionable, even though he has now shown up. I played mainly on FanDuel. He is very affordable on FanDuel. I think $6,100 on FanDuel. I couldn't really quite give you his DraftKings price, but Chris, in a GPP tournament where Tennessee is giving up, if I remember correctly, the second most points to fantasy running backs right now, are you flirting with Josh Jacobs in lineups?
So you're right. They're 31st. They're the 31st best defense against the run here. It looks like I got a notification after we started recording that he is going to play.
Okay.
Listed as active today, according to Adam Schefter about 16 minutes ago.
All right.
On DraftKings, he's about 5,400. So very affordable. In terms of the roster percentage, it's probably going to be under 20%, especially with this illness. It might be actually trending down. It might be a lot.
That's what I was projecting. Glad you brought that up because that's what I was wondering because I felt like he would have been up there with Fournette at 30% if this were a healthy against this matchup and that price tag. But now what is this illness going to do?
Yeah, I think his illness is making him trend down. I don't think he's going to be as rosters as he should have been without the illness. So at his very affordable price, I think I'll be throwing a shot in a couple of lineups for sure.
All right, Austin, does he have any chance of finding himself in a cash lineup? Josh Jacobs?
I don't really love him in cash lineups this week just because I feel like while he has the ceiling, I don't feel as comfortable with the floor for Josh Jacobs. Like if he is illness and let's say he's on a snap count, like I'm a little bit worried about usage from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Hunter Renfro's out of this game. And so they might just be feeding Darren Waller and Demonte Adams. And it's a pretty close spread. It's a 1.5 game spread. So this is going to be a tight battle and they're going to be trying to move the ball downfield. They're not going to be playing from ahead and burning out the clock. So I worry a little bit about the snap count from Jacob. So I'll be avoiding him for cash, but if I wanted to get different in a tourney lineup, I'm here for it.
I was going to say, I love how these last two questions have come together where Fournette is a much better cash option. Jacobs is a much better GPP option. Speaking of GPP, I had you guys do the exact same thing. Get different options for GPP. These are folks out there that you're not going to see in a ton of lineups, but you guys think they could pop. We spent a lot of time on David Montgomery, Austin, but talk to me about Derrick Henry.
Yeah, and I'll defer to Chris on these for the most part because I don't look at the projected rostership of players before games. But I really like Derrick Henry this week because Las Vegas has not done well against the run game this year. And I think people are going to be afraid to start Derrick Henry given his first 2 weeks. And to me, he's still Derrick Henry. He's still like he will mow you over. He's a threat to get a 70-yard touchdown at any time. And so I'm not afraid of him. And if I'm in a tourney lineup, like I think the ceiling is too high there to pass up on it for a week.
So before I move to you, Chris, and Chris, you're a big Derrick Henry guy. Is he still Derrick Henry at 3.1 yards per carry? Chris?
Oh, it's been rough. Like I said in the group chat, I'm worried about both him and Dalvin Cook. It's got to be get right games for both of them, especially for the Titans. The Vikings can win without Dalvin Cook, but the Titans can't win without Derrick Henry. If they're going to avoid being one of the worst teams in the league, they need to see him get going.
Yeah.
And my thing there is just like part of that is they faced the Buffalo freaking Bills in week 2.
And
they might be the best defense.
Nobody is giving the Bills the credit they deserve. 100%.
Yeah. So, like they got tore up by Derrick Henry last year. And I think this offseason, they were like, hell no, we are not letting that man destroy us and win a game for them single-handedly again. And they consistently were getting contact on him at or behind the line of scrimmage, which makes it harder for him to pick up the momentum he needs to really bull rush over guys.
Yeah. Chris, you had some. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
I was going to say, I like that pick for GPP specifically. He's supposed to be under 5% rostered. He's expensive. He's over 8,000 on DraftKings, but with that roster percentage and, facing the Raiders, right? I think if he doesn't smash here, it's, full panic in the streets.
I think we're pulling the eject seat at that point. All right, Chris, talk to me about your GPP get different options.
All right, so I really like Joe Mixon this week. It's different. He's kind of rostered, kind of not, about 15% lower than Josh Jacobs. But so far this season, he's averaging 23 touches a game on the ground, over 6 targets a game through the air. He hasn't scored this year, so that's that he hasn't smashed this year. But he has had 4 carries inside the 10 and 3 carries inside the 5 so far through 2 weeks, so it will come.
Yeah.
It's just if it's this week, I think with his price not being too bad, it's in the 7,000s. He could smash playing against the Jets. I mean, let's throw the week 1 out. Ravens didn't even have a running back, but in week 2, Nick Chubb had 87 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground against the Jets. I'm chasing that for Joe.
Yeah, as am I in quite a few lineups. But then you also threw Miles Sanders out there, and I see Miles Sanders getting a lot of traction on Twitter as a Josh Jacobs pivot right now. So,
yeah, Miles Sanders is lower rostered in GPP lineups. I like him so far. He's also had 3 carries inside the 5. they're going to use him. It's going to be him or Hurts. Like we've seen in week 1, the Philadelphia running backs, I think, had 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns. If you can get 1 or 2 of those from Miles Sanders, he's going to have a good day. And he's playing against the Commanders. Swift and Williams torched Washington last week on just 18 carries. Swift had like 5 for 60 or something like that.
Swift fell down and still found the end zone.
And then in week 1, they gave up 15 for 111 and 2 touchdowns to James Robinson and Travis Etienne. I think they're going to get gashed by the Eagles on the ground. The Eagles could put up 30, 40 points, and Miles Sanders just needs to find a couple of touchdowns, and he's going to have a big day.
Yeah, I've been telling everybody I think Carson Wentz turns back into a pumpkin this week, because I think if any team knows how to beat him, it's the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm going to see how that goes. But I agree, it could be a big win for the Eagles. When I go to wide receivers with these guys, basically what I have them do is I tell them to build a 3 wide receiver lineup. No matter which format you're playing in, you have to start 3 wide receivers. But I tell them they have to give me 1 cheap, 1 middle of the road, 1 expensive. In true Kyra fashion, these guys gave me multiple options at every single dollar amount in layer. But you know what? We're doing great on time. So talk about them. So Austin, start with me with your just actually walk me through, if you had to build 1 cheap, 1 middle, 1 expensive, who would you pick? And then give me your alternatives for cash.
Yeah. So if I just had to pick one of each, I'm going with Greg Dortch for my cheap option. I mean, he's $4,300 on DraftKings, and he is like the number 2 in this offense at this point. And I have no worries about him. Like, he scores a touchdown, he's paid off. We're good there. I love Jacoby Myers this week. To start the season, I was like, okay, let's give the Baltimore Ravens some credit. They were hurt last year. That secondary was not at 100%. And then Tua Tagovailoa just was like, just kidding. The secondary, 6 touchdowns. Let's go. And so I am going with Jacoby Myers this week. I think he's $5,500 on DraftKings. So nice middle of the range player. 5,000.
I don't mean to cut you off.
I just forgot. Jacoby Myers just got announced out, or is about to.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to cut you off, but I'm like, yeah, he's out.
Nope. That's fair. Okay. Well,
so who's your other option? Good thing you gave 2.
Well, before I go to Gabe Davis, I would say Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne, I think they're fine pivots from Jacoby Myers. I think one of those receivers reaches the end zone, and they're all priced in about the same range. So pick a Patriots receiver that you like, and I think you'll be set. My alternative for a mid-tier, and he's a little bit more expensive, but is Gabe Davis, and hopefully he still plays. Like, I know he's been questionable. I think as of now he's set to play, but I think Stephon Diggs is going to get a little bit more attention this week, and Diggs is still going to be fine. Like, I'm not worried about him having a good game, but I think it will open up some more opportunities for Gabe Davis down the field. And so I like him. I think he's in like the 6,000 range on DraftKings. My expensive option is Justin Jefferson. Again, it's the Minnesota Vikings against the Detroit Lions. So there's not much more to say there than what we've already said. And then lastly, Cooper Kupp, which is like every week for draft for GPP, or sorry, for cash lineups. But I think the point here is they're playing the LA Rams they're playing Arizona, and Arizona is their defense is quickly becoming a Detroit Lions tier in my mind. Like, if you're playing the Arizona Cardinals right now, just fire it up.
Fire them up. No, I'm good with that. I just want to give people a little behind the scenes that Austin is quickly becoming his own kiss of death, because Austin called Hunter Renfrow in his article and then asked me to pivot from Renfrow to Myers. And now Myers is out. And we all know Gabe Davis is a game time guy. I'm worried about all my Gabe Davis shares at this point. But
I need to go tinker with my lineups.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, Austin. You're just killing these guys for me. No, in all seriousness, like I said, definitely a weird thing. And that's why you tune into the show. And that's why this show ends at noon, everybody. So we can go make our changes to our lineups immediately, because it needs to happen. Chris, talk to me. Same exact premise: cheap, middle, expensive when it comes to GPP lineups where you want to be a little bit different.
Okay, so I'll start with the middle, because I also had Jacoby Myers in one of my builds here, but I'm pivoting to both of them just being Chris Olave.
Okay.
He's not rostered at all. He hasn't broken out yet, but he's, according to Matthew Betts, I loved his write-up on this. He's the one that got me thinking of Chris Olave this week. He's running around on 84% of Winston dropbacks and has earned a 21.2 target share. If he breaks out in a big way, especially with the air yards he's accumulating, he could be huge this week. My cheap play is Ashton Doolin. He was my cheap play last week. He went 5 for 79. That's really good considering his price.
And a lot of people don't realize 2 red zone targets in week 1 for Ashton Doolin. So they're using him down there. So,
and he wasn't that bad in week 1 considering Michael Pittman was still there. The Colts are going to have to throw the ball a lot. I worry about people's Jonathan Taylor shares, as they think they're going to get boat raced by the Chiefs. But I think it's safe to assume, 5 for 60 kind of game. That's all you need from a cheap option. And then my expensive options, I like Demonte Adams this week to, get right game. We all seen what Stephon Diggs did to that defense. Demonte Adams has all of the talent in the world to do that as well. And speaking of Stephon Diggs, that game, Miami, Buffalo, is going to be an absolute shootout. I'm staying away from Josh Allen, but I'll have some Diggs shares. I'll have some Miami shares, but I think Diggs is going to smash yet again.
And I love that you say that because we've had people on the show. I've been focusing a lot on the show of more people talking about theory because the goal is just to make people better at DFS in general. And when you see names like Demonte Adams, Stephon Diggs, you're like, well, that's going to be too chalk. But when you're building these win the million lineups, you need the best players in there most of the time. So sometimes that involves eating the chalk, and you're really only looking to get different at 1 or 2 spots, right, Chris?
Yeah,
Diggs, like quarterback. Diggs don't start Josh Allen.
Right. Diggs is absolute chalk, but Demonte Adams is only projected around 9% roster.
Interesting. I wonder why that is. I mean, I know Tennessee, on appearance, I think Tennessee's been good against the wide receiver, but if I remember correctly, Tennessee in 2021 gave up the most fantasy points to the wide receiver for a large portion of the season. So I think you're absolutely right about Adams, but I'm shocked he's that low.
He could be a leverage play off of Waller or Josh Jacobs, or he could be a bring back on Derrick Henry. A lot of people aren't building around Demonte Adams.
That makes a lot of sense. Chris, I'm going to move into tight ends with you. So basically the question I ask when it comes to tight ends is essentially, is there anybody you're paying up for this week? Chris, you're going to focus. People tend to focus on what they're good at. So Chris, you're probably going to focus on GPP. But when I look at tight ends, you're kind of making your decision for the whole group because of how bad the group is. So is there anyone you're paying up for this week? And if you're not, who are you paying down for, or who are you punting on?
I mean, if I can fit Travis Kelce in my lineups this week, I'm fitting him everywhere. Or I'll stack him with Pat Mahomes. He's expensive, and that's why he's not rostered that highly. He's looking like he's around the 12th highest roster share of tight end. Just to punt the position in general, there's Irv Smith, Dallas Goedert, Juwan Johnson, all those guys. Just send them to the moon. Keep Kelce in your line and watch him go 10 for 120 against a Gus Bradley defense.
I love it. And Austin, same question. Is there anybody you're paying up for this week? And if you're not paying up, who are you looking for at the bottom?
So I tend to not pay up at tight end because it makes it really hard to.
I find that to be the most common thing I hear from every cash person is that I tend to not pay up at tight end.
Yeah. And I think it's because the way I tend to go about this is I want a player to return 3 times their value for me to feel like it was a successful pick. And Travis Kelce, he does have the upside ability to do that every week. That for him, he's typically around $7,000 to $8,000. So that's 21 to 24 points. But that's a big ask every week. And so instead of trying to pick and choose what weeks I think he's going to do that, I like to find value picks elsewhere. And I'll give an example. I have Will Dissly in a lineup, and it's enabling me to put Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Jalen Waddle in a lineup. I can pay up 3 places elsewhere because I punted so hard at the tight end position. And to that end, Will Dissly is one of my punt plays because Seattle is playing the Falcons this weekend. And so this is somewhat of a homer pick, but also the Atlanta Falcons have 2 decent outside cornerbacks. And so I am a little concerned about Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf this week. But Will Dissly, he's been utilized a lot in this offense already. And I think Geno Smith is going to have to pass the ball over the middle of the field. There's no one on the Falcons defense that scares me over the middle of the field. So Dissly is, he's like $2,800 on DraftKings. If he scores a touchdown, we're good. I'm done. Like he can have 1 catch for a touchdown and we're good. And I think he probably does more than that. I would also just throw out his prop bet right now is something wildly low, like 13.5 yards, receiving yards. And I might smash that over because I think he will easily get 2 catches for 15 yards at a minimum. My other punt play is Irv Smith. And 2 things here. I think one, we're getting a Monday night discount because they played on Monday Night Football and all of the salaries get set before those games start. And also, I think we're just getting some hate on Irv Smith. If he had caught that 1 catch, it would have been like a 60-yard touchdown and everybody would be smashing Irv Smith in the waivers this week. So I like his utilization in this offense, especially that was his first game back from injury. So I'm taking him. And again, the Detroit Lions, not good.
Yeah. Chris, I'm going to bring up a tight end that I think the whole world is wondering about. And Austin, I'm going to let you talk about him for cash as well. But Chris, I want you to talk about his roster percentage if you can bring it up, if it's at your fingertips. What's going on with Kyle Pitts? Is this the week? What was it? Two catches for 19 yards in back-to-back weeks. Chris, I know you're down on Kyle Pitts based on the group chat. But this week against Seattle, no Jamal Adams. Are we going to see Kyle Pitts this week? Have we seen Kyle Pitts? And what is the DFS community thinking about Kyle Pitts when it comes to roster percentage?
So he's at about the same as Juwan Johnson, hovering around 7%.
Okay.
That doesn't sound like a lot, but given that Kyle Pitts is 4,800 and we see the general theme is people don't pay up for tight ends, both in GPP and in cash games.
Yeah.
So that's why he's kind of low. I think them not having Jamal Adams is not a great thing for him.
Oh, okay.
Because if Jamal Adams was covering him, he'd probably go for like 6 for 102. I'm not a Jamal Adams fan.
I say you're not a Jamal Adams guy, obviously. So, and that's fair though. He's not great in coverage at all. So
we'll see. 2 for 19, 2 for 19 back-to-back weeks. If he doesn't smash this week, or at least show some signs of like 6 for 70 or something like that, I think there's going to be a lot of panic in the streets. And I'm not a hater on Kyle Pitts. I've always just preached, that second, third round value, not to bring in redraft. It means like you're taking him at his absolute ceiling, and we haven't seen that yet. And I just preach caution. I preach caution again. I wouldn't roster him, but if you're looking for the pre-breakout rostership, this might be the week for it.
Absolutely. Austin, they're your Falcons. What are you thinking, especially when it comes to cash lineups?
For cash lineups, I'm avoiding because I just, again, 2 for 14, 2 consecutive weeks. That makes me nervous. And he's too expensive in cash for that kind of performance to legitimize starting him. I do have him in a couple of GPP lineups, but I don't have him as my tight end. I actually have a lineup or two where I've stacked him with I've correlated him with Will Dissly, because as a tight end, he's a little expensive, but as a receiver, he's not. And he lines up as a receiver fairly frequently. And the Falcons are weird and Seattle is bad. And sometimes these ugly games end up being weird shootouts. And so you could have a game where Will Dissly has 2 receptions for 15 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Kyle Pitts has 6 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. And that is a weird enough lineup that it could really send you over the top in a tourney.
And what's interesting is we saw the Seattle crowd get hyped for the Russell Wilson return game, and it obviously put a damper on Denver. Are they going to show up for this game? Because if that Seattle crowd brings that level to the Falcons offense, the Falcons offense might just delay a game the entire game. They put the controller down. It's going to be ugly. But that's going to be interesting to me, guys. I'm going to throw a user question here. It's not quite DFS, but this could be a question people are asking in DFS this week before we get into the defenses, but you guys are doing great on time. So we have a quarterback start sit question. Matt Stafford or Kyler Murray, they're playing each other. Obviously, Stafford has the weapons, but risks interceptions, and then Murray can do what he can do with his feet. But they did bring up that the Modern Warfare beta came out this weekend for PlayStation, and we all know Kyler Murray loves to get his Call of Duty in. So that's a worry when it comes to Kyler Murray. So Chris, Stafford, Murray, who you starting? I know you're a Rams fan.
That's tough. I'm not Stafford's biggest fan in fantasy this year.
Okay.
Just because we cannot get the run game going, and they're keen on the passing game. He's thrown some interceptions, some bad ones, but I think he's safer. Just because what we've seen from the Cardinals the last 2 weeks is they've been absolute trash for the first 2 to 3 quarters.
Yeah.
They came back and won last week. Murray had ended up with an outstanding game, but week 1, garbage time saved him. Like, if, we see what we saw happen with the Rams Cardinals in the playoffs last year, it might be a disaster.
Ooh.
I don't know. That's a tough question. I'll probably start Stafford if I'm looking for, 15 to 20 solid points. If I want the upside, I'll go Murray.
Austin?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. To me, Matthew Stafford is the cash play this week because Arizona's secondary is so bad. And if Cooper Kupp is scoring touchdowns, Matt Stafford's scoring touchdowns. Yeah. And then if I want a tournament play, I would go Kyler Murray. And you could stack him with Greg Dortch and Zach Ertz and also probably come back with Cooper Kupp. And that's, enough to get different. I'm not, again, Chris knows more about the projected rostership on those players, but I like kind of getting interested.
I think this might just be I think this might be a just straight start sit questions.
I think it is, but Austin brought up a good point, and I want to push back just a little bit on Zach Ertz. The Rams have given up to Dawson Knox 1 reception, and then Kyle Pitts 2 receptions. If you're looking for someone to play against this Rams defense, it's Hollywood and it's Greg Dortch.
Yeah. And so that might be a good time to do like a skinny stack, because people who do target this game might do a lot of double stacks with both Brown and Dortch, and you could just pick one of them and then get different elsewhere in your lineup.
I love it. I predicted 3 for 30 for Zach Ertz this week in one of my articles because it was 1, 2, and so they're just going to keep it rocking. So 3. I think I gave him 31. The best game. Exactly. So it's just going to get better. Again. Well, I was going to say by week 17, someone's going to have 17 catches against the Rams if they keep this streak alive. So it's
got to keep going up.
Exactly. Guys, we're going to talk defense. And I got to say, this might be the first time in the show where I don't understand any of your picks on defense. I'm going to let you guys. I love defense and special teams. Chris, I maybe understand one of yours. But Austin, start with me. The Jets and the Falcons, because you're getting crazy here for me, man.
So. Well, clearly you didn't read my article because I explained both of those in my article.
I read it. Come on.
Okay, so the New York Jets, they're going up against the Cincinnati Bengals, and this offensive line is struggling for me right now. And so I tend to, again, similar to tight end, I tend to punt a defense. And so I'm looking for a defense that is cheap, that I think has upside. And if the New York Jets are going to be putting pressure on Joe Burrow and potentially sacking Joe Burrow, that leads to increased risk of fumbles, and fumbles in the backfield increase the chances of a return touchdown. And so I'm kind of going with the mindset here that the Cincinnati offense, it also just doesn't look good right now. They're so predictable. Like I heard a stat last week, 14 out of 16 times they were under center, they ran the ball. It's like, if I'm sitting on my couch and I can look at you and say they're running the ball before the offensive line has taken a step, that's a problem. And so I think this offense is just not interesting, and they're giving up too many sacks that it could lead to some turnover opportunities for the Jets. This one was a little risky because, obviously Jamar Chase could get 3 touchdowns in any game, but I kind of feel okay with it. And then with the Falcons, I know I said it could be a messy game, but it could be a messy game in terms of it could be 10-7, or it could be 31-28. It's hard to say. And there's enough pieces on this Atlanta Falcons defense that they can get a little frisky every now and then, particularly at cornerback. those two outside cornerbacks are going to make it tough on Geno Smith to get the ball to, again, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I don't feel super confident in Geno Smith's ability to pass against man coverage. So he might give up an interception or two, and who knows what happens from there. Like, I think that they're cheap enough that it's like, I don't need them to do much. I just need them to not get blown out of the water.
My biggest worry with your two defenses are just the weapons on the other side. And that's kind of what you've hit on, is the Jamar Chase and the DK Metcalf. And that's what kind of scares me off. And I understand points allowed isn't the worst thing in the world for a fantasy defense. Picks, and way more importantly, you want them to score a touchdown. That's exactly what you need. So if you see the interceptions, you see the defenses. Chris, you're picking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which I don't think is a surprise when you consider their injury report. And I guess you can kind of stack in here because we definitely have time for our end of show questions. And I was asking if there's anybody you're avoiding. So if you want to talk about the Green Bay Packers and just why I'm guessing you're avoiding everybody on Tampa's offense.
So even Tom Brady struggling with injuries this week. I was reading he's got a thumb thing. And, with all the wide receivers out, there worries that offensive line. If I'm Green Bay's defensive coordinator, I'm just pinning my ears back and I'm just blitzing time after time after time with a little protection for the Leonard Fournette dump offs, of course. Tom Brady is not dumb. He's a very intelligent QB. But, we've seen Tampa twice so far this year, and their offense has not looked great. It seemed kind of off with New Orleans, but that's because Jameis is throwing pick sixes.
Yeah.
I think with Rodgers, that's not a worry of mine. I think Tampa is going to be playing from behind. They're going to abandon the running game, and I don't know. It's going to be tough. Green Bay's rostered in 2% of leagues, given that it is Tom Brady.
Well, I imagine all four of the defenses you guys have picked here are below 5% pretty easily.
Actually, I was going to say I like Austin's thinking on the New York Jets. They're actually a top 5 roster defense projected because of the issues on Cincinnati's offensive line. If they have 3 or 4 sacks, Joey turnovers is going to have,
Oh my God, Joey turnovers. You guys are dicks.
I like that. I like that pick from Austin. And then, let me get out of the screen.
Yeah, so you have the Chiefs for your other.
Yeah, the Chiefs. Indianapolis looks awful. They look terrible.
Matt Ryan does not look like an NFL quarterback right now.
Doesn't. And here we thought Matt Ryan was going to be an upgrade from Carson Wentz for that team.
Yeah, Wentz with 6 touchdowns through 2 weeks.
Pittman's going to get his. He's going to be targeted 15 times, but they really struggled against Houston. It was a late comeback effort that actually got them into overtime, and Jacksonville just absolutely blitzed them, and that's really funny to say. So with the Chiefs, I would imagine they go up 14-21, and then it's just going to be a disaster for Indy.
All right, perfect. Guys, we have plenty of time for our end of show questions, so I'm going to get to those, but I'm going to blow through a few of these things here. Austin, you've already talked about avoiding the Seattle wide receivers. Chris, I've had you talk ad nauseum about avoiding Tampa Bay. However, Austin, you have another pick on here, which I find very interesting. My guy, Christian McCaffrey made the joke this week that he can't take a leak without ending up on the injury report, but you're saying we need to avoid him. I'm going to guess you're focusing on Cash, but talk to me about it. So.
Yeah, I'm focusing on Cash, and it's nothing to do with everybody, commenting every time he sneezes or anything like that. It's just this New Orleans defense. They traditionally really good against the run game, and they are the New Orleans Saints team right now. They are what keeps them in games, and they were giving Tom Brady a really hard time last week. And so I think that Carolina is going to struggle to move the ball. So I would avoid Christian
Baker
McCaffrey.
Mayfield is not as good a quarterback as Tom Brady. Is that the implication I can take from what you just said?
Look.
That, and also the Carolina coaching staff is not as good as Tom Bowles and anyone.
Did you guys see that? Did you guys see that report from Dan Orlovsky on Carolina's the way they run their shotgun? Every time Christian McCaffrey is even with Baker Mayfield in the shotgun formation, they're passing the ball. Every time he's a yard behind them, they're running the ball. Like, he showed so many examples of this. And I'm like, you were talking earlier about telegraphing, Cincinnati telegraphing their place. Carolina's doing that too.
Oh. If Matt Rule has a job by week 17, it's a travesty. I've been saying that since 2020. I know you have. Okay. Absolutely. All right, guys, to finish up the show, I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on you because last week we got this into the show and it ended up, I forced Josh to clip it because I was so impressed with our guest and Kyra. So to start, I asked, what I'm asking you guys, is there a double stack and a bring back or a triple stack or any of that kind of stuff that you would do this week that you just feel really good about it? Kyra gave me Carson Wentz, Terry McLaurin with an Amon-Ra St. Brown bring back. Holy shit. But then Eric had to one-up her and gave me Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle with a Mark Andrews bring back. And if you didn't play fantasy last week, the FanDuel Million was won by that lineup with some people put in. So the FanDuel Million was built with a lineup that was given on the show. Did they watch our show? Probably. I mean, who's to say yes or no?
I'm pretty sure they did.
So, yeah, obviously. But holy shit. So things like that I absolutely love. And as a novice to DFS, I'm learning, especially in cash, Austin, that maybe you're not looking to stack and you're certainly not looking for major stacks. But I know you, Austin, are always looking for correlations. So, Chris, I'm going to give you time. I don't know here in a second. I don't know if you had one in mind. I know you brought up one earlier. But, Austin, you have one on the paper. So do you have a double, triple, bring back, just any sort of correlation play this week?
Yeah, and we've kind of alluded to it throughout the show. I like targeting the Minnesota-Detroit game for my cash or for my GPP plays this week. Okay. You can get a Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Irv Smith double stack. I like double stacking here because, again, Minnesota has a 29 implied point total. That's at least 4 touchdowns to go around. And then I would come back with either Amon-Ra St. Brown or DeAndre Swift. I might go Swift as a way to get different because if other people are targeting this, you could pivot off of St. Brown to get Swift instead because he's still going to be involved even if they're behind, right? He gets involved in the pass game, so he's not going to get game scripted out. I also think when Chris brought up Jared Goff earlier in this, I also like stacking it the opposite way where you go with Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and maybe even DeAndre Swift because, again, he's a pass catching back. So stacking with him makes more sense than a Dalvin Cook type player. And then you could bring it back with either Dalvin Cook or Justin Jefferson. And I think that would be even lower because if people are targeting this game, I feel like they're going to lean towards Kirk Cousins as their starting quarterback over Jared Goff. So I really like targeting this game as a game to kind of like build my lineup around.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm actually going to slow you down because, Chris, that was your stack as well. So talk to me about your 2 stacks because you guys agree a lot on these stacks right now. So,
yeah, I love that stack. I think Goff's going to be lower rostered than Kirk Cousins. So for GPP, I'm probably going to lean Goff's way. I would stack him with Swift. I think as a leverage play off of Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is going to be very rostered. I think Goff and Swift correlate really well. So far this year, Goff's a top 10 QB.
Chris.
Uh-oh. We lost Chris.
All right. While we're waiting to see if Chris is going to come back, Austin, you have KC Indy on here, and that was actually Chris's next stack, was just a double stack with Mahomes, Kelsey, CEH. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think for me, like, again, with GPP plays, you're trying to get different as much as possible because you don't want to be in line with 70% of other lineups because then you're not going to beat those lineups. And actually, I wanted to bring this up and get Chris to talk about this, and we can have him talk more about it when he gets back on. But when we're talking about leverage, we're talking about leverage over the rest of the field. And so if you know that 30% of the field is playing Amon-Ra St. Brown and you decide to not play him and it works out and St. Brown has a rough weekend, well, you've just gotten leverage on 30% of lineups, which is going to increase your chances of going up the board. Now, the counterpoint to that is...
Well, I was going to say, what I've learned from you guys is I have Amon-Ra St. Brown in far too many GPP lineups right now.
The counterpoint is if you have St. Brown and you just ate the chalk and he does go off, then you've gained leverage on the other 70% that didn't start him. So it kind of depends. You need to get different somewhere, right? You can't have all players that 30% of lineups are rostering. So you kind of have to pick and choose where you're going to eat chalk versus take the leverage point.
All right.
When it comes to...
No, please keep going. No. I was going to get us into the outro. So if you have more, keep going. So
I was just going to get back into this Kansas City, Indianapolis game.
And we hadn't even got there yet. We're still talking about the Sun God as we should be. No, please go.
And I think it's an interesting game to target because I expect it to be fairly low rostership, given that I think even though Indianapolis has struggled to start this year, I think people think that defense is still good because they have such a reputation over the past several years, and so are maybe devaluing Kansas City a little bit, but also they don't feel like a good matchup to correlate with, because typically when I'm looking for a stack, I'm always trying to correlate with the player from the other team. And who are you going to correlate with on the Indianapolis Colts right now? They've looked like garbage. And so I think that's a great opportunity to get different, where you can have Mahomes, Kels, and maybe another Kansas City receiver, and then bring it back with like an Ashton Doolin, Michael Pittman. If he plays, like Michael Pittman is still pretty cheap on both FanDuel and DraftKings. So I like that as a get different play. I'm probably, if I'm going this route, I'm less likely to double stack and more likely to just have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and then bring it back with one Indianapolis Colts player. Yeah. But that's my thoughts on that.
I was going to say, week. Chris, that was your stack originally, and then we lost you. So do you want to throw in anything? And even if you're repeating Austin, it's absolutely fine. But you had Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and CEH. So.
And did you get any of my Goff Swift stack before my internet was like, nah, fam?
Yes, absolutely. We got through the Goff Swift, and then we were going to cut to the Indianapolis. So,
okay, yeah, and just bring them back. Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, pick your poison.
Yep.
I really like Mahomes and Kelce as a stack today. And then, I see a lot of love for Juju. I'm not gonna roster Juju. I'm just not gonna do it.
I'm the only club fantasy person who likes Juju.
That's not true. That's not true.
Oh no, you do like him, Austin. My bad. Yeah,
just not for DFS.
Well, yeah, and that's fair. I just meant in general as a human being.
No, yeah, Juju will never be rostered by me. I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire today. Back-to-back solid performances. He's probably going to be really low roster. They're going to get out to a lead, and he might have 20 carries this week.
And then do you agree Austin had brought up, because of how discombobulated Indy is on the other side, do you think there's no Indy bring back in this game?
If you can afford Pittman, I would like to roster Pittman just because Ryan's going to hyper target him. Maybe a Doolin if you're looking for a super cheap option to make everything else work, to make sure you can fit Kelce in your lineup. Doolin's probably going to, or Nyheim Hines. They're both probably going to be, 4 to 5 receptions as they're trying to come back.
Paying up for JT this week.
No, not me.
I would also consider subbing CEH for Jerick McKinnon, because they've actually had a closer snap share this year than you might expect. And Jerick McKinnon could score a dirty touchdown or two and snag it from CEH. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, nobody's playing Jerick McKinnon this week.
It's certainly different.
The only issue I have with that is I did that same thing last Thursday in the showdown when they were playing against the Chargers. I went McKinnon instead of CEH. The only problem I have with that is, if they get up big, McKinnon might not play as much. It might be CH and then Isaiah Pacheco.
All right, guys. I think that's about it. I do have a user question, and we have a little bit of time, so I'll let you guys answer. I answered in the chat. Oh, that is not the right user question. I answered in the chat, though. So we're going to start 2 in a PPR. CeeDee Lamb, Rashad Bateman, Curtis Samuel, DK Metcalf, Garrett Wilson. Chris?
Why did you go to me first? I thought you were going to go to Austin.
Austin?
So one of the definite one I'm going for is Curtis Samuel. I think I like him this week because they're playing Philadelphia, and you're going to have Darius Slay most likely shadowing Terry McLaurin.
Okay.
And the way that Curtis Samuel is utilized in that offense, he's going to be less likely to draw coverage from Slay or James Bradbury. So I think he has a decent game. And then I think it's hard to go away from CeeDee Lamb because of the value that you paid for him, and he's still getting fed.
Hyper targeting, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's still getting fed by Cooper Rush, and so I might still play him. I think to me he has a safer floor. If I were to pivot away from him, I would go Rashad Bateman because of the ceiling there, but I would probably go CeeDee Lamb and Curtis Samuel.
Chris,
this is a tough question. Why does this user have so many really good wide receivers and we can only pick two?
Good job,
I think it was a humble brag almost. So it's hard for me to not start CeeDee Lamb, but I'm not going to do it this week with his roster. I'm going to go Bateman for the big playability. And I don't know. I really like Garrett Wilson too. I think with the way Joe Flacco is throwing the ball, Garrett Wilson might have double-digit targets again. I'm just shooting for this. I'm shooting for the moon with his wide receiver core.
Well, there you go. So yeah, and that's kind of where Austin said safe, and you're saying upside both on Bateman and Garrett Wilson. So I like that. And then we got one more question to end the show. Pick two. I haven't even made my decision on this one yet. So pick two: Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Cortland Sutton, and Antonio Gibson, I'm guessing. So we're dealing with a flex here. In this situation, I really wish Gibson would be more used in the passing game. I would go Sutton and Gibson because their roles are safer, and I think you guys may go elsewhere for upside. But for me, it's Sutton and Gibson. Austin?
Yeah, for me, it is Sutton and London because I think Drake London, I mean, he's just getting targeted out the gate, so I'm not worried about his utilization and think Mariota is going to continue to target him.
All right, Chris?
I also love Drake London, 19 targets through 2 games.
Yeah.
Last week, 8 for 86 and a touchdown. He's my number one. And then in terms of the others, I would still go Mr. Wilson here for the upside.
Oh my goodness. So that's what happens when you get 3 different people. You get 3 different answers. So if you're playing for upside, go with Chris. If you're playing for safety, probably go with me. And then somewhere in the middle is going to be Austin. So there it is. Chris, tell everybody what you do, where they can find it.
So you can find me on Twitter at ChrisMo2413. You can find my work this week. I took the week off. I write a weekly prop bet article on Underdog. We'll start again with week 4, but I give you 5, and if you want to use all 5 player props, you can use 4. You can use insurance. I love that about Underdog. Yeah. But yeah, you can find my work on Club Fantasy.
There you go. Austin, also on Club Fantasy, but I know you have some side projects as well. So.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Austin_FFL. The primary thing I'm doing right now actually is my weekly cash article with Club Fantasy, the A-list. It comes out on Friday or Saturday, kind of depending on how things ride, but it consists no later than Saturday, so you can count on it by then. And I do start sit every Sunday morning from both my Twitter and Instagram accounts, so follow me there. I actually talk to you on Instagram. I just tweet at you on Twitter, so just so you know what you're getting.
I love it. All right, guys. As I mentioned every week, make sure you're following Club Fantasy. Every week on the website, we have DFS articles about matchup reports, Austin's article, but we also cover waivers, my streams of the week, start sits, and then we also cover betting lines, and as Chris mentioned, player props. So we cover just about every facet of Sunday football throughout the week. Articles start dropping on Wednesday, typically. Well, my waiver article drops Tuesday. You need to be subscribed to our damn YouTube channel. Every time we hit subscriber milestones, we give things away. As we hit our marching towards 450 subscribers, we are going to give away an autographed Cortland Sutton jersey. So make sure you are subscribed. Make sure your profile is public. If you don't want to make your profile public, make sure you DM me or the Club Fantasy showing us that you subscribe so we can get you into the drawing. This show is going to be back next week. I have no idea who the guests are, but we do shows every single day of the week on YouTube. Maybe not every single day. That was hyperbolic, but we have Monday shows, Wednesday shows, Thursday shows, Saturday shows, Sunday shows. We're there for you. And way more importantly, these guys are great for DFS advice. They're great for redraft advice. But if you're looking for a more one-on-one connection when it comes to redraft, I recommend that everybody check out Connect Go. It is an app that the links are in the description where you can connect with some of your favorite fantasy analysts. I am on the app. Stepmom Lauren is on the app. Nate Markham is on the app. And basically for a small fee, you can connect with us either through text chat or even set up one-on-one video calls. And we're there to help you with lineup decisions, trade decisions, waiver decisions, whatever you want to talk about in fantasy football. You get to pick the brains of some of the best people in this industry. So check out Connect Go. Again, links are in the description. We're here to help you guys win some championships. For Austin, for Chris, I'm Ryan. It is just now 12:01, so inactives are about to hit. Go set those lineups and put this advice to good use. Hope you win $1 million today.